and these are the places where I have these turns of phrase that have a lot of prepositions in them, so it's calling it a cascade of complements. I'm not quite sure how I would translate that, but it's just pointing out to me that I have a lot of complements in some of my sentences, and most of that is because I have the name of an organization that's repeated several times, not necessarily in the first sentence there, but it does come up a lot. So for these ones, I'm going to go through them. I do need to keep them, so I'm going to just ignore these. For now, that's the name of the organization, so is that, and so is that. And what I'm left with then is a passive and a participle. These things are generally discouraged in French. Doesn't mean that they're never used, but they are less frequent than they are in English. So I've only got one of the passives, and I've got two participles. And one of the participles, of course, is just a repetition of another one. So I'm going to keep these for now. I'm going to ignore these changes, but I'm going to have to revise it a little bit. I'm going to perhaps research a little bit more to figure out how I can perhaps rephrase these things if I need to. So just for now, just so that we have all our errors accounted for, I'm ignoring those. And now I can move to vocabulaire, and there's only one problem here. It's fait le traîneau à chien. Now, based on all the research I did about how to say going dog sledding, it seems to be that faire le traîneau à chien is correct. Now, perhaps I'll have to do a little bit more research, but for now, so everything's accounted for, I'm just going to ignore this, but I will have to go about a little bit more revision. So now, Antidote tells us that all of our errors are accounted for. We don't see any more here. So now, I'm just going to quickly show you what I mentioned before, and that's how to add something to the dictionary. So if I take this place name, Moonstone, and I replace it with the name of another town, such as Fesserton, it is not recognizing it anymore. So I can highlight this, and I can choose Add to the Dictionary. So this is where I would normally put my definition down here. It doesn't really have a definition, just the name of a city. So I can select nom de lieu, place name, and choose city, and then it's done. And it's added. So there's no more error listed here. So that will now appear in the dictionary if we search for it, but there won't really be much of a definition, or rather there won't be a definition at all, because I didn't add one. But if we search up terms that are already there, then we will get a fairly extensive definition, and we'll see that when we take a look at the dictionary. So now that everything is done here, we can take a look at the finished product, and what we'll see is that in our Word document, everything has been corrected. We don't have to export this or save it in any particular way because, of course, Antidote is an add-on to Word itself, so all the changes are made automatically. All the corrections are there. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is necessarily free of error, because Antidote doesn't catch everything, and I find in my case I typically have to look through the finished product to find things that I typically don't see when I'm looking at the text in Antidote. And actually I've caught one right here. This isn't supposed to be this way, so I'm going to correct that. So it just shows you that even when Antidote's done, when you've gone through all the processes, you do have to revisit your text and just take another look as you normally would with any translation project, and just make sure that everything is correct. There may be some more changes I have to make in keeping with translation conventions, with translation norms, with French language norms. There may still be some things that I have to revise and correct. So the point, of course, is that Antidote can help you a lot, but you do still have to do your own revision. So now we are going to take a look at the dictionary, and for this example I'm going to use a fairly simple word that appears quite a few times in my document. It's chien, dog, and what we'll find is that even though this is a very simple word that we all are familiar with, we'll find that there's a lot we can learn about it from the entries in the dictionary. So we open up the dictionary just by highlighting the word we want, which I've done, and clicking on this green book right here, and that will open the dictionary for us. So we start off, of course, with the general definition. It's very extensive and has many examples from all over the French-speaking world. It includes many colloquial and idiomatic definitions as well. Synonyms gives us all the different words for chien, and here too there are many regionalisms. And believe it or not, there are some antonyms to the word chien, all of them figurative, of course. Concurrence shows us the words that are often paired up with the word chien, and they're organized by the parts of speech. And lexical field shows us words that are often associated with chien, that includes sled, leash, animal, barking, etc., with a word cloud to help you visualize the lexical field. There's no conjugation for this word because it's not a verb, but if it were a verb, this is where you would find the conjugation. And family shows us all the words that fall under the umbrella, if you will, of chien, or in the same family as chien, that incorporate this word or have the same root. Citation shows us how chien has been used in French literature in some notable places. Historique gives us the etymology or historical development of the word chien, which we can trace century by century. And of course, Visual Nano gives us a visual dictionary for chien with these pictures, not only of dogs, but also of guns, because one of the definitions of chien in this dictionary actually is a part of a firearm. So you can see how these dictionaries can help you to improve your vocabulary in French and gain a better grasp of how terms are used in the French language. This can be highly beneficial when using terminology either when writing in French or when translating into French. We'll now take a look at the language guide section. This is a reference that you can turn to with any questions that you have about the French language. It's designed to help you to expand your knowledge of the French language and to strengthen your command over it. So beginning with orthographe, we have here all the details and nuances of French spelling conventions. Lexique is the section on morphology and on semantics. It's about the formation and the meaning of words, and it has, for instance, anglicisms and improprieties, things you should avoid, and it also has a dictionary of the terms used in Antidote. Grammar is all about the parts of speech and their precise function in the French language, and syntax is the section on how these parts of speech come together to form phrases. So it's essentially the section on French sentence structure. Punctuation deals with things like periods, quotation marks, exclamation points, question marks, etc. It's very different from English and very important to know when writing in French for professional purposes. Style gives you an array of different devices that you can use to write more skillfully, and it also tells you about certain things you should avoid in French, like my cascade of compliments from before. This is all meant to enable you to write with more mastery and with more naturalness. Rédaction shows you the different types of correspondence in French, such as letters and emails, and all the rules and conventions and etiquette that you need to follow for each one. Typography. This goes back to my problem with the apostrophe. It was straight when it should have been curved. That's the type of thing that's covered here. It's all the information that you need to know about writing in French, specifically on the computer. Phonetics is about the formation and the classification of speech sounds, specifically the speech sounds of French in this case, and it also covers things like intonation, rhythm, syllables, and all aspects of pronunciation. Historique is a little bit like the historique from the dictionary, except that instead of the history of words, we have the history of entire languages. They're grouped by phylum and by family, so you can trace the historical development of a very wide variety of languages throughout the centuries. Point de la langue is a list of miscellaneous questions asked about the French language, which are answered by the Druids, that is the creators and the developers of Antidote, and they're also posted on the Antidote website. So you can see that this language guide is a very, very vast treasure trove of information, which I've had to go through relatively quickly, but you can see it's very detailed. There's quite a bit to go through. This will enable you to continually improve your skills in the French language in order to lessen the need for correction in your writing in the future and to make your writing easier in the future. And the section on rédaction can possibly help you to correspond with a client. This is hugely beneficial for us as translators since we always need to be expanding our knowledge of our source and target languages, and it also lets us learn some interesting things in the process. We can see from these demonstrations that Antidote software is a highly valuable resource for language professionals, particularly if you happen to be translating into a language that is not your A language. While this is not done very often, it's under these circumstances that a translator will reap the greatest benefit from this tool. This is not to say that using Antidote for your A language won't be helpful. We all make mistakes in our native language, but it's when writing in or translating into your B language that you will probably make the most errors and need to develop your skills, and that is where Antidote will be most crucial. Of course, as we have seen, Antidote is not sufficient unto itself. It does not eliminate the need for human correction, but it is a major factor in making the work of revision more efficient, and also for lessening the burden of correction in the future. Making use of Antidote's language guides and dictionaries will strengthen command of the language in which you are writing, so that with time, you will make fewer errors and develop your writing skills. I hope that this presentation has helped you discover the benefits of Antidote, and I hope this software will be of use to you. That concludes this presentation. Thank you for watching.